Pushing the Limits, episode 4, Gitex week. How's it been for you, G?
Good. It's also Halloween edition. It's been a good Gitex so far. Can't complain.
Yeah,
Better than last year, right? More impressive booth.
I think Salesforce knocked out the park. I think their booth was by far the most creative. I mean, compared to last year where they were just very brand new, I feel like they dominated. And it was very different to all the other big corporate companies, man. And you turned up for a change.
Yeah, and it felt like a small chunk of Dreamforce transported here to Dubai for Gitex.
Dude, last year, it was me and Anuj who works for Georgi. He's ex-Salesforce, killer architect. Somehow we ended up in a place called Headlines. And I want to show you the picture of the way that we ended up Gitex. Talking about Gitex, though, we're joined by, I mean, legend is used quite loosely, but I do feel he is a legend. I've followed him for some time. Sales-wise, he's always promoting great content on LinkedIn. He manages a great team. He's broken some big numbers within Salesforce. And he took time out of his first Gitex to join us. Stephen Clifford, welcome to Pushing the Limits. How are you, man?
Very good, Hemi, yeah. And Georgi, great to be here.
How's your first Gitex been, dude? Honestly, like, are your feet aching in any way?
My feet are aching. I have beaten my personal steps records this week for sure. Pacing around, but no, Gitex, super impressive. I think over 170,000 people in Dubai to explore the latest innovation, not only in software but also across hardware, machinery, everything. The scale is super impressive, and yeah, I mean it's left a serious impression on me, and it was been great presenting around all of our latest innovation at Salesforce there this week as well. So all in all, a serious win.
Mate,
yeah.
Great way to end it. Appreciate you being here. For those that don't know, obviously me and G, I think we followed you for some time. You know, I see, like I said, some of the content that you put out, which I think sales, and you might agree with this, Stephen, right? Sales, when I started 15 years ago, was a bit of isn't a career, but I feel like now things have changed so much, the way we look at sales with AI, the way the world's changed. And I look at the Middle East and the way sales are done here. And I feel like people need that help and support. For you, just for people who don't know you, give us a brief intro into Stephen Clifford.
Sure. So Stephen Clifford, 7 years at Salesforce, currently senior sales leader for the growth business segment. So scale up companies all across the Middle East. So focus on the region for the last 2 years. Prior to Salesforce, I worked across a couple of different industries. Was in advertising for quite a while on both the creative side and also the business side. So suit and creative from a madman analogy. And prior to that, I worked actually in TV and film for a while as well, in media production. And also in my relative youth, I was a musician and recording artist as well. So I've had a really diverse set of experiences leading up to where I am right now. But the reason why sales for me, to your point, right? I mean, how does someone get into sales in that way? By,
exactly.
You know, it's essentially about like matching problems to solutions, right? And if you have a diverse set of industry experience across different segments, different verticals, you just see more problems, right? Yeah. And then the more problems you see, the more solutions you can envision as well. And when you consider something like Salesforce, how it is applied cross-vertical, cross-industry, all it's doing is solving problems for people. And I think in its purest sense, that's what sales is about, right? It's about solving problems for people. Yeah.
I think with sales, like, you're right, like it's solving solutions, but there's, you know, like I think sales still is such, especially in this region, Gio, I think we were talking about, right? Like there's still a gap where I feel, you know, people need support and help. Like I've obviously watched seminars. There's loads of influencers now, Stephen, including yourself on LinkedIn, who offer help, right? And support and actual genuine advice. For you, did you know from an early age that you, I wouldn't say had the gift of the gab, but did you know that sales was something that you were good at?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess your past experience often only makes sense in hindsight, right? So when people are on a journey through life, through their careers, they mightn't realize the experiences of having them and how they're all going to join up in the end. But for me, getting into SaaS sales in particular, I understood that a lot of my past experience had led me to be quite effective in that environment. I mean, if you take my own experience, right? So I mentioned I did lots of different things, right? So musician, I was a cameraman for a while. I worked as a digital marketing guy in an automotive company. I was in advertising. So if I go into any of the things where I actually had a technical skill component, okay, videography, musician,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest, and even when I was doing the marketing, I was doing the design, I was doing the website development. So any of those things that have a technical skill set, you'll relate to this, Corgi, I was just mediocre at, but I was never out of work. So actually, what I was very good at was creating opportunities, right? And to put that into Salesforce parlay for anybody who uses a CRM, you want your salespeople to create opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm mediocre at these technical skill sets, yet I'm never out of work, I realize, it just seems like I'm good at getting doors to open. So what's an environment where you can go where that is rewarded the best, right? And typically SaaS sales is a higher margin business. And so for a salesperson, it makes sense to, as a rational economic actor, to say, well, where's the best place I can get a return for this skill, right? And I think to your point, there is a lot of, I mean, look, there's always been a sales coaching industry. There's always been books out there to help people to influence better, right? How to win friends and influence people.
Do you remember Boiler Room?
Do I remember what?
Boiler Room.
No, I don't. No.
Wolf of Wall Street?
Oh, Wolf of Wall Street, yeah, of course. So look, there's always been programs for people to get more effective at selling, etc. So
I love the Madman one, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, you must remember it, the tobacco one.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how it's like, oh man, it's just epic. I don't know if you've seen it. No, not a Madman fan. No.
Yeah. So where I think we're at with selling is that with the level of technology and the amount of information that's available to people, that should all just reduce the friction in people realizing how they can help other people solve problems. Because I always say this to my team, in today's day and age, there shouldn't be such a thing as a cold call, right? Because within leveraging a bit of research on the internet, on LinkedIn or whatever, I can very quickly understand who you are, Hemi. I can very quickly understand who you are, Kyogi. And then I can understand a reason or a framework of understanding what problems you might have. And then by virtue of that, I can call you and ask you for 27 seconds of your time on the phone and say, look, you might be having this problem and I might be able to help. What do you think? You know? And
makes the approach a lot warmer, right? Do you still feel though, Stephen, like without going off topic, it's not like the information helps, right? Like I do cold calls a lot, BD, and having led a team globally and managed people, do you feel like it's more the doing nowadays? Like if you look at the new generation of sales, we had no choice but to do cold calls and to reach out and build relationships and meet face to face. Do you feel it's changing slightly with the new age and social media and just the way that technology moves now?
I think there is a communication preference from people who might be earlier in their career for not picking up the phone because they're used to, like in how they've grown up, they're used to text communication, used to social media. So I'm very curious in how that evolves as that younger cohort of Gen Z become founders, become CEOs, like we're seeing it already. What's their communication preferences? But ultimately, like a good salesperson, it's not about, I genuinely believe drive is one of the things that you can't coach. You can't coach drive. Yep. And drive is quite an intangible quality in people. And I think the job as a leader or anyone who's trying to recruit people into a business, I mean, you'll know this, you're in the recruitment game, is to spot drive. Yep. You got to spot that internal motor that people have to push on and have success. And in my experience, that's one of the hardest things to find in the market is that drive. Yeah, but once you find it, you can build a great team. So really, you have to get your radar tuned for that when you're speaking to people. Are these people who can make things happen, who can overcome difficult situations, and that's what you're looking for really is competencies, right? Because you can have 3 master's degrees from all the top universities in the world, and I might interview that person, and I might interview someone who's spent 2 summers going door to door selling encyclopedias in rough neighborhoods.
That's harder than it looks, by the way.
Right.
My first first job was door to door.
Yeah.
And I literally lasted a week, dude. Like it's tough, man. Like rough areas. I was in like I don't even want to.
Selling what?
It was British Red Cross, but obviously me turning up didn't send the right impression in this rough neighborhood where they were quite anti British Red Cross. But it just makes you uncomfortable. It just makes you out of your element. and you're face to face and you have to sell. So it was a great experience, man. Looking back now, it helped me so much. If you ask many people to do that in this day and age, they would struggle.
And I feel like this topic of drive, it's not only applicable to sales. I mean, when I'm looking for developers, for architects, for me, the key thing is drive. You need to have like a foundation of experience, but drive is what really differentiates you.
Yeah, totally. And particularly for people young in their careers, right? I mean, because if everyone's coming out of university with a degree, how do you differentiate at that level? Because you're at the lower end of your career journey. So the market is flush with new graduates. So how do you differentiate that? And it is about your experience and what else you've done. I mean, and it could be even in place of a university degree. So I think that's super important. Yeah,
absolutely. And one thing we were talking about earlier before we started the podcast was about LinkedIn and on the topic of communication channels. What do you think of LinkedIn? Like, you're posting a lot personally, posting a lot of videos and stuff. How has sales evolved for you specifically in the use of LinkedIn over the past few years?
Yeah, look, I mean, the idea of personal branding within businesses is very powerful. I mean, put it this way, right? Any salesperson wants to be able to speak with credibility to a senior level of executives in a target account and be taken seriously. And if people know you before you walk in the room, that's only beneficial to you, right? So by investing in posting in LinkedIn, whether you're a sales development rep, 24 years old, or a CEO of a scale-up company in their 50s, it can only benefit you by having a stronger personal brand, because you can basically get to the crux of the issue that you can help people solve quicker, because your brand, they already know what you're about. So therefore, a conversation starts up on a more elevated footing. And that's the way I look at it. It's not about trying to gain followers or likes or clicks or anything like that. It's essentially, well, what's the mission in the market? Our mission, my team's mission, is to help the scale-up companies in the Middle East reach the next level of growth, right? Okay? And to help them connect with their customers in a more intelligent way. If I have to explain who I am every time I walk into a room, I'm losing time. So that's the way I look at it.
You build that trust up front, and
Exactly.
really it's so low effort. I don't know how much you spend, maybe like 30 minutes, an hour a week doing content. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I'm in the gym, and in between the sets, I'm just writing the posts.
Dude, I do that as well, man. Like, people think it's more thought out than you think, but it can come spontaneously. And I think you might relate to this, Stephen. It's consistency, right? It's consistency of posting good content, not every day, but even if it's twice a week. LinkedIn is built on algorithms. So they're actually driving video. And if you look at the new feature that LinkedIn's just brought out, what's it very similar to? TikTok.
Yeah.
Video content. Hence why like our trailers get thousands of views. But if I was to write Pushing the Limits podcast coming out, I wouldn't even get nearly as many. So I think you've got to go with the time. And Stephen is an ambassador of that. I think that's where I saw him, right?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, the point I always make to people, particularly the salespeople, is, and also to the CEOs and VP of sales that I speak to from a Salesforce perspective, week in, week out, is that LinkedIn, okay, like we all buy media, right?
Yeah.
You can launch a paid ad campaign on LinkedIn, and you're buying per 1,000 impressions. I think in the last year, through posting content, I've been able to generate like 1 million impressions, right? So that has a media value of multiples of thousands of dollars. So every salesperson on your team can actually unlock that if they're leveraging LinkedIn correctly. So really, companies that are leveraging this bottom-up marketing are essentially saving money on the paid media.
Yep. So true, man.
But you just have to embed it in the culture of the company, right? That you're looking for people who are creative minded and
you speak to so many people in tech and they're like, man, I've not used LinkedIn in like 2 years.
And
I was looking at you.
You're
better. You're better.
Like every
he
day.
Is better. When I first met G, he was like, I don't really post that much. But dude, your LinkedIn
I'm like pretty consistent now. I have like almost 10K followers.
You're an influencer.
I'm legit now.
You're an influencer, dude.
You're legit, man. Yeah.
And speaking of culture, so as an ex-Salesforce employee, the Salesforce culture is amazing. What, aside from culture, what else brought you into Salesforce? There are a lot of CRMs out there, a lot of technology companies out there. Why Salesforce?
Yeah, well, to be honest, when I started looking at getting into SaaS sales in particular, I was working for a digital agency before that, and we were doing a lot of projects for spanning mostly for marketing departments of bigger enterprises in Europe. And a lot of what we were doing was leveraging CRM data to inform intelligent marketing campaigns, right? And actually build out digital experiences in the context of that. So we were exposed to Salesforce, not only for the CRM, but across the full suite of the applications Salesforce offers, like Heroku and things like that. It just understood that, wow, this company has a vision for bringing customers closer, businesses closer to their customers. And that's what got me kind of interested in the company, and I interviewed and was successful. And I haven't looked back, to be honest. It's been 7 years, and it's a fantastic company to work for. And it continues to evolve. And I love working this region as well.
And speaking of evolution, this wouldn't be a Salesforce podcast unless we talked about Gen AI.
Yes.
How is Gen AI changing the game?
Well, to be honest, generative AI is changing the game. I can just elaborate. I mean, we're blessed at Salesforce to be able to use our own technology. We practice what we preach, and every single day, our teams are using it to refine email outreach to clients. We're using it to do account research. We're using it to record meetings and to summarize text and transcribe. So it's unleashing a huge amount of productivity for the people who understand its potential, And I guess this is the thing with generative AI as well. People say, well, is it not going to replace jobs or whatever? Look, the printing press, when the printing press was released, there was a bunch of people who were writing that probably did lose that line of work, right? But it also allows some of those people to unleash a higher level of creativity. And that's how I see generative AI as well. It's about humans and AI working together to create better outcomes for everyone.
Do you not think it just makes, you must have noticed this, Stephen, it must have made your team more efficient. Like, instead of them sitting there trying to come up with something to a prospect, you've got something that can just save them a bit of time, but still have quality and still be tailored.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's if you have someone who understands how to write effective copy, and then they are now proofreading what the AI has done and tweaking it, that's a faster time to that message being sent.
Yeah.
So that's great. I mean, I think what my concern is that still, obviously, from the education system, people still need to learn the foundational skill sets whereby they can audit what the AI is doing and to think critically about the effectiveness of this.
Yeah.
Because that's my concern sometimes, is that salespeople will neglect to build that solid skill set of, critical thinking.
Yep.
And creativity, because that's the human component.
It's a dependency that you might have on it as well, right?
Yeah. So, but look, we're blessed to have a great team at Salesforce, and all the team are leveraging it the way it's meant to be leveraged. And I see that in our customers as well. They're rolling out this AI to make their sales teams more productive, and it's saving people time, and ultimately it's actually allowing people to connect with their customers better, because the sooner I can get to a face-to-face interaction with a customer, whether that's over a Google Meet call or a Zoom call that's being recorded into Salesforce and the insights are being generated, or it's a face-to-face meeting like we're having today, AI is just helping people connect better when it comes to the sales outreach, because you're cutting through all the fluff a lot sooner.
Big time. I was going to ask you that. I work in an industry where, again, Gen Z, it's more social messaging, sitting on LinkedIn, maybe sending messages. Do you still feel that face-to-face meetings within sales in a general, like, not just SaaS, but in general, is still the best form of building relationships and rapport?
Yeah, 100%. Look, we've evolved to interact face-to-face as humans, right? I mean, that's the way we've developed. So I think if I meet you and look in your eyes, I'm going to understand on a much deeper level the level of risk you see in a project. Maybe, the fact that you mightn't have slept that well last night and you're not really thinking,
Yeah, it's been Gitex week. I'm sorry, Steve. Look, the eyes are a bit hazy.
Yeah, connecting remotely is amazing, right? But if you're on a call with someone, how do you know how many tabs they've got open? How do you know that there's not something off camera that is distracting them? So face-to-face is the best form of connecting with people. And I don't think that will ever change. Technology has just made it a lot easier to have a higher volume of conversations when that's not possible, and that's fantastic as well. But I think you'll never be face to face. for selling. 100%. You get to the truth of a situation a lot quicker if it's face to face, right?
The old 7-touch rule, man.
Yeah.
They say that basically a 7-touch rule, it's like how many touches or calls it takes to get to that point of sale. But I think a face-to-face can get you there a lot quicker.
Absolutely. I had one question of, I think a lot of our audience is more technical people, developers, architects, etc. For those kind of personas, if you come from a technical background, like as a developer, and then you're moving to more of a sales role, like pre-sales or starting your own company and having to do sales, what advice would you give those folks from, coming from a technical background and enabling yourself to become a successful salesperson?
So it's a bit of a shift, right? Because people will have built up oftentimes a sense of a strong personal identity around being the technical person. And that's fantastic because you can come into a meeting then and speak credibly about the technology. But what you have to develop as a strong skill set to be able to leverage the best of both worlds of your technical skill set and be a fantastic salesperson is kind of on the psychology of sales. It's massively important. And also like developing that EQ, right? That emotional intelligence to be able to read a room. And I think the best way you can do that is through volume of interactions, because that's how a lot of that stuff is assimilated into your operating skill set as a salesperson, right? So anybody who's looking to make that shift, I would say you've got to just throw yourself into it and be humble, because if you've been used to being the credible technical person, and now you've got to pivot and open doors in 30 key accounts in the first 6 months of your job, that can be a bit of a shift for some people. So you really, my recommendation before you're making the shift is talk to all the salespeople you know and try and get a flavor for whether that's for you or not. But I genuinely think, having done some technical sales roles myself within our business, that if you can match that sales savvy with solid technical knowledge, you will be a superstar.
Dangerous combination.
Superstar, yeah. So if you can crack it, more power to you, as they say in Dublin. Yeah.
And you guys mentioned a few books and media that you would recommend from growing your sales skills, sales methodology. I think you said how to make friends and influence people. Is there anything else that you would recommend to our audience of things that really made an impact on you and made?
Is there anything that you've had your team do?
That's a good one.
Because I used to get my team to go to like a coffee shop that's like a big chain and stand in a queue, and they would have to ask for a discount, knowing but knowing they wouldn't get a discount. So knowing that obviously you're not going to get a discount if it's a big franchise, but just to be uncomfortable around people and ask the question, it helped just get them out of that shell. I don't know if you've done anything like that.
Yeah, I have. I've because in my master's, we did a whole thing on negotiation, and the professor said the exact same thing. So this weekend, I want you to ask for a better price everywhere you go. Every single time you're exchanging money for goods, I want you to ask for a better price.
It works, man.
It does work. It does work, yeah.
I'm going to try that in the parking lot after we leave.
No, people are willing to haggle in places I never thought they'd be willing to haggle. I mean, you can get a beer in the bar for €1 less or whatever, so.
It's the famous saying, Guy.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
Exactly. And honestly, dude, I think the Middle East is great for that as well, because it is a place where you can negotiate and have that business conversation where it's still done with a handshake. So try it. If you do get money off parking, you owe Stephen a drink.
I'll report back.
In terms of Salesforce in the Middle East, Stephen, we get asked on this podcast, you get a lot of messages, I do. It's evolving, right? It's a market where Salesforce, even if you just look at this week, their presence was huge. There was a lot of hysteria, a lot of people talking about it. LinkedIn, so many posts this year as opposed to last year. What do you see in terms of Salesforce and the growth in the Middle East? And is there anything that you could advise anyone who's looking to come here, and basically get into the region or get into Salesforce?
Yeah, so look, Salesforce continues to invest in the Middle East. Last month was the official opening of our office here.
Yep.
So it shows that we have a dedicated presence here, and that will only continue to grow. My advice for anybody who's looking to get into the ecosystem in the region would be to, look at the established players, understand by coming to our events like World Tour and like Gitex, to understand how Salesforce as a company is evolving. Okay, so we've launched recently Agent Force.
Huge.
Exactly. So anybody in the ecosystem, I think we mentioned this at the start, you want to find your angle, right? So the more you can speak to people, partners, recruiters like yourself, the more you can kind of understand where you might be able to slot in. But ultimately, what we've seen from more mature markets is that there's a groundswell of demand for more technical skill sets within the Salesforce ecosystem. So I think the best thing people can do is invest in your network as well as your skill set, and be, as you said, be consistent around that, around certifications, and around having conversations with the various partners in the ecosystem. And I think that's a fantastic way to start to see where you might find the opportunity. Yeah,
it's an exciting time, man. Like, you've been here longer than I have, right? Like, you must see, going Gitex, which is your first one this year. Like, were you taken back a bit by the presence of Salesforce?
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen over the past couple of years is there are a lot of SIs trying to enter the ecosystem, but to your point, I feel like they aren't able to sell their key selling point. I think there's this misconception that you come here, you'll immediately make a lot of money without putting effort into it. You need to have some kind of niche or know your space, pick a specific industry or product that you have expertise in, and you need to be able to sell that message to your customers. What I see is a lot of SIs are just like, oh, we'll just enter the market and start dominating. It's not like that. I mean,
they need to follow Steven's content, man.
Maybe
they'll tailor their approach a bit better.
I don't think that's something unique to the Middle East. I feel like any region you go into, you need to have a good selling point, an industry, product specialty.
Has it not always been like that, Joji? Like, if you look at EMEA, APAC, and NA, has it not always just been opportunistic?
Every conversation I have with an SI that potentially wants to enter the market goes like that. I don't know what it is about this, but that's the sense.
I mean, it's the fastest growing.
But the growth is just amazing. If you look at Gitex last year, you were saying it was quite a small booth. This year, it felt like, seriously, it felt like just a small chunk of Dreamforce was teleported over here.
Yeah. I'm not laughing because it was a small booth. I'm just laughing because our good friend Dennis Bernard, who you probably know as well, from France, who worked at Salesforce for years, he was the opening speaker. And I just remember just sitting on the bench, just watching him, and it was a big moment, dude.
And look at World Tour last year. I mean, and the year before, it's like 100% year-on-year growth of attendees. It's just absolutely crazy growth.
Shout out Dubai Dreaming as well.
Impossible in any other region.
So there's so many different events. I mean, the user group that you started as well, right? Like, it's only getting bigger. No, I think you've answered that. If you need any more advice, anyone watching, please reach out to Stephen. He already gets probably many messages a day. But just keep hitting him up. In terms of sales, Stephen, as well, what was the best story that you've probably had in your career so far? Like, it doesn't have to be specifically with Salesforce. It could have been the first paper round you had in Ireland, if you had a paper round. when you got that one tip,
I'll tell you a story. So basically, when I was a musician, a singer-songwriter, right, there's a really well-known Irish singer-songwriter called Declan O'Rourke who was playing in my hometown. I wanted to be the opening act, right? So I knew the promoter, okay? And I approached the promoter, and said, look, can I be the opening act? And he said, no, he's already got a support act, so you can't play. I was like, oh, heartbroken. No, I was only a young guy. But I basically tracked down Declan, the singer-songwriter's information, and got in touch with him directly and said, look, what's the story? Can I get on the bill? And he was very gracious and got back in touch. He said, look, I've already got someone, but I'll give you 10 minutes at the start. So I was able to get on the bill of that gig and sell some CDs afterwards. But I remember very vividly walking into soundcheck, and the promoter seen me and he's like, what are you doing here?
Doing here, dude?
I said, well, yeah, Declan said I could come and play. So that was just very natural for me to do, right? When I look back at it, it's like relating it to a SaaS sales situation. It's basically finding a way to get to the key decision maker, right? Now, arguably you could say, well, yeah, but you may have burned the bridge with the promoter. What the promoter did in that case afterwards said, okay, I see what you did there. And then he put me on a bunch of other gigs, and I made more money off the back of that. So, that was something I did, before I was in.
But you used initiative there,
Yeah,
Steve.
exactly.
Like the thing
exactly,
is,
yeah.
a lot of them,
Yeah.
like, I'm not saying that sales is a dying breed, but I feel like you used your initiative and you had resilience, right?
No, sure, and
you
that's
got turned down, but then the
yeah,
resilience piece came in,
yeah,
and you were like, I still want to get on that show, and then you just thought out of the box,
exactly. And
and you made the approach.
exactly.
You might have
It's
got a
that
no.
drive.
And also that's the hardest thing, right? Nobody likes rejection. Like nobody wants to hear no 100 times a day, but I mean, you shot your shot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, if anyone's listening who wants to be in software sales or wants to progress in software sales, if you have stories like that from your back and you tell that in an interview, it's very compelling, because you might think, oh, it's not related to selling technology, but you're showing the competencies and the drive to, ultimately get the outcome that you want. And
Big time.
that's what sales is about. And it's about helping the customer get what they want, but also what you want as well, right? So
Do you feel the stuff that you've been through, like from advertising, marketing, music, do you think that all had an accumulation?
yeah,
to-
100%.
Do you think
So
that, like in sales,
yeah,
you see that,
yeah.
like all the stuff people go through, whether it's good or bad? I mean, a lot of the best salespeople that I've ever worked with, they didn't come from privileged backgrounds. Like a lot of them went through, a lot of ups and downs, whether it was personal, professional, and it was just all that life experience that led them to this point where they were great with people and they knew how to network.
Yes, like I speak about this a lot when people ask questions about how to be good in sales. I mean, you might have, it's the compounding effect, right? So you, for 10 years you might be, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then you get in an environment, that has the right incentives, and you have this diverse experience. It can just click for people, and that can happen at different times for different people on their career journeys. So like my advice for anybody who might be younger is that, it's okay to be, you have to be engaged with what you're doing. As long as you're engaged with what you're doing, you're learning.
Yeah.
And then you'll find yourself in the right environment by being engaged with what's in front of you. But you can't get to where you want by hating your current situation in anything, right? You have to be fully engaged in the present moment, on the present challenge, whether that's sweeping the floor in the shop that you're working on, or working in a retail environment, whatever it is. If you're not doing your best in that environment, you're not gonna progress your way out of it, because it's like a computer game. To level up, you got to beat each level, right?
So true, man.
And that's so your point is totally correct, that it accumulates, it compounds, and then it can just click and rocket for people.
You ever made your team do the elevator pitch at all?
The elevator pitch. Well, we've only 6. It's easier to do the elevator pitch in the San Francisco Tower, where there's, I don't know, 70 stories.
You've got literally time to do it.
Yeah,
All Heron
yeah.
Tower in London, right?
Yeah, exactly. So in Dublin, when we got 6 stories, Dublin's a very low-rise city. I said, okay, elevator pitch, it's not enough time. So we have the stairway pitch instead. Yeah.
I know you've got to run shortly, and mate, honestly, we appreciate you taking the time out, especially with the week that it is this week, which is one of the most hectic and manic within tech in the Middle East. Quick one just before you go. Your favorite thing about Dubai, or your favorite restaurant, favorite food, favorite place to go, and don't say McGettigan's.
I won't say.
He literally was about to say.
I was with a client in a place called Atiko.
Atiko, yes, dude.
Yeah, like unbelievable views of the city.
Amazing.
Very nice music, very chill, and a great place to have quality conversation. So that's probably been my highlight of the week is checking that spot out.
Nice, man. Yeah. Nice. Stephen, honestly, thank you, man. You came, you saw. If anyone needs any more advice on sales, follow Stephen's content. Honestly, dude, like what he does and the post that he puts out, like it does help. I've definitely taken inspiration. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks
and
so much.
Look forward to meeting you again, man.
Yeah, and so my final pitch is, so, in Salesforce, we have a community for people who want to get better at sales, and I'm heavily involved in that. It's called Sales Blazers.
We'll put it up as well. Sales Blazers.
There's a great Slack group, some great content on that.
There is.
I love it.
It's a fantastic community of people globally, all trying to get better at sales, all sharing stories, resources, and also enabling everybody on Sales Cloud and how to unleash that productivity as a seller. And that's something I'm super passionate about, and it's a mission that I'm involved with in the company. So
that's amazing.
Awesome.
So Sales Blazers.
Sales Blazer. we've got hoodies, we've got everything, and we're going to activate that here in the Middle East in the next few years. That Sales Blazer community.
I think so many people will benefit off that.
Yeah.
I just think like I wish I had something like that starting out, man. But the fact that people can have access to it, and now it's coming to the Middle East, is amazing. But Stephen, honestly, thank you, man. I know you've got a demo. Sales never stops. There's always an opportunity. There's always a client. There's always something to do. And yeah, connect with Stephen, and peace. We're out.
Thanks so much.